Hi, everybody. You know, this morning I kind of mentioned to you that I am coming from Google, and I was at Google with a handful of executives from ExxonMobil. So would you like to stand up? They're going to all clap for you for being more innovative. I was joking that you guys all were wearing suits, so they're gonna know who you are. But we had a couple of. David is wearing the Augusta shirt, so we have a couple of exceptions to the rule. But welcome, and why I mentioned about ExxonMobil this morning when I welcome everybody, it was about the culture and what culture has to do with innovation. And I really think, we have a lot of big insurance companies here, automotive companies here from Detroit, GM, Ford, etc. I think that, if I can tell you a little story about Mark Field, he's the CEO of Ford. He came here 2 years ago on one of these trips. And at that time, he said, Saeed, this is so amazing with connected car and innovation. A lot is happening here. And he said, the first trip he came, he said, I'm going to come back here every quarter, and I'm going to build a team here that will connect the innovation in Silicon Valley to Detroit. And initially, this is 2 years ago, when he said he's going to do this, he was planning to have about 20 to 30 people here. I went to his grand opening about, I would say now is 8 months ago, and the building and the lab they got in Page Mill Road, it's already too small. They have 150 people already here, and something they did is very interesting, is they took a president of the lab from Detroit, and they have like his shadow, another president from Silicon Valley, somebody who has worked here for 20 years. And then they built different discipline teams under this Ford lab, and they are incredibly happy that they have done that. And then I just tell you another little story. About a year ago, Airbus came here and spent 4 hours with us, with the CEO of the aircraft division, CEO of the helicopter division, the CEO of the defense division, plus all of their board, plus all of the executive team. And within 60 days, they opened an office here in Plug and Play. They hired someone from Andreessen Horowitz if you don't know, that's like one of the best VC firms, the most upcoming VC firm in Sand Hill. And Tim, I think is his name. And they opened a little venture arm, $150 million. And that is small around here. And then they also opened a lab, almost exactly the same way as Ford or other companies are doing. So the message I have is you could come here and try to build connections to Silicon Valley one by one, but it's really interesting if you could use clusters like Plug and Play, and there is more of them in the Bay Area, and suddenly connect with 100 corporations and 1,000 startups. And again, we would welcome everybody here, and we would love to find the most interesting entrepreneurial startup that will create Nest, for example, because we did not invest in Nest. And we want to find the next one today. So with that, I turn it over to Philip.
Okay, well, let's talk about IoT, shall we? And before I start, please remember, if you don't have your rank tab sheets, again, maybe Yael will be walking around somewhere, I think, in the back with the voting instructions. So if you don't have that, please go talk to her. Okay. IoT. So let's go to the first slide. Who's heard this before? The by 2020, there'll be 50 billion connected devices. No? A couple of you? A few of you? I think it's Cisco's notion that they came up with there will be 50 billion connected devices by 2020. Other companies followed saying, no, there'll be 75 billion connected devices, 100 billion connected devices. Either way, that's a lot of connected devices. That's at least 6 or 7 connected devices per person for everyone in the entire world. Who's seen this? Thank you. A few hands. For those of you new to this, this is what's called the hype curve or the hype cycle. It's a notion where every technology goes through the 5 phases of hype. That's the innovation trigger, so that's when a technology is born. Peak of inflated expectations. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Trough of disillusionment, slope of enlightenment, then plateau of productivity. That's when the application, or that's where the technology becomes widely adopted. If you guessed that IoT is at the peak of hype, you're correct. The hype is real, ladies and gentlemen. And one more thing, who's seen this before? More hands than the hype curve? This is something, I have to do a shout out to Jason Waterman. He sent me an article with this in it. It was really cool, it's right there. So I thought I'd put it in it. But these are kind of all the key players that are in IoT, all the different drone companies, platform companies, corporations, investors, VCs. So if you haven't taken a look at this, I urge you to. Point being, that's why we continue to run Plug and Play IoT. It's been huge for us. By no means is Plug and Play an expert in Internet of Things, but we are partnered with a lot of experts. So we learned a few things, so I'd like to share it with you guys. This is kind of the overall Internet of Things trend that we've seen so far. So the term IoT was coined back in the day, and then came wearables and sensors and gadgets and toys, and we started talking about connected car and autonomous driving, and then smart home, connected home, kind of the smart everything phase, the smart coffee maker, the smart refrigerator, the smart TV. And then we started talking about smart cities, connected cities. So cities started to discover IoT and embed sensors all around their cities and the roads and the buildings, and they started to collect data. We did a smart city event last month, and these CTOs and CIOs of all these cities are now having to become IoT experts. And then finally, we're getting into now this industrial Internet of Things phase, or industrial 4.0, or transportation applications, oil and gas applications, and healthcare is on here as well. So because healthcare and connected healthcare became also so big, we decided to kind of separate that into its own program. And the point here is that kind of each circle, I believe, represents the value that it will bring in IoT. So what does that mean? Basically, B2B applications is going to be key. Is what's going to bring the 50 billion connected devices by 2020. I also think computing is going through an interesting change. You know, whereas first it started in this large data centers, now everything became in the cloud, and Cisco introduced Fog. We have a startup later on that will introduce Mist, so it's more and more local computing. And eventually, this here is from Samsung and IBM using blockchain technology to authenticate between connected devices. We have a colleague here that's a Bitcoin guru. He'd be proud of me for showing you this. But if you don't know what blockchain is, it's technology to authenticate Bitcoin transactions, and now that will be used in IoT. It's a lot of interesting stuff. And a couple more findings. I talked about the value in B2B. Interoperability is going to be key. There's so many standards and protocols and platforms that it's very confusing. So new products and applications are going to have to be open, going to have to work with Nest, essentially. I keep on stressing this, but we've become experts in collecting data, but we've still not been able to filter it properly, clean it to be able to use the right data for future applications of IoT, so this is something we're going to work on as well. And the next one, a little more obvious, but the best business model always wins. I think it's even more important than the technology or the algorithms or the coding that goes on. If you see all the successes that we had within IoT, it's always they have a great business model. And I can't talk about IoT without bringing up security and privacy. I won't go too much into it. I know some of our startups will, but point being, this is something that we need to keep in mind. Okay, so plug-and-play IoT so far. We've accelerated 67 companies, and this is through the last year and a half. We invested in 17 of those companies, about one per month. 70% of the companies that join our program go on to do some sort of pilot or POC with one of our partners. Similarly, 70% of companies looking for funding that join our program will get some sort of funding. So very successful so far. We've had 2 acquisitions. CogniView, which is an embedded vision solution, got acquired by Freescale Semiconductor. Waldo or Kronos was acquired by Life360, both kind of social networking platforms. So we're still waiting on that 3rd acquisition from batch 3. And 43 different corporate partners that we currently work with. So here's a snapshot of the companies that we currently work with within the IoT program. So it's been a pleasure working with all these companies here, and it's being able to matchmake these companies with the next big thing in IoT has been extremely fun. And you already saw this in the morning, and if you're a frequent plug-and-play visitor, you might have seen this multiple times. But very quickly, this is how we get to the 22 startups, most of whom you'll see pitched today. So we start with our amazing anchor partners, who's sitting right there in front of us. That's Bosch, Mercedes, Munich Re Insurance, Philips Lighting, SC Johnson. We get to know their different business units, their innovation teams, their venture arms, get to know their technology interests. We then source and scout and filter all these startups, eventually get to about 40 startups who will then pitch to our partners, and then accept eventually, in this case, 22 companies into the IoT program. During the program, they get the necessary resources and services that they need to go to market faster, and then finally, they will stand on this stage here and then graduate the program. I'd like to announce a few of our partners, brand new partners that will be working with us for batch 4, and that's Caterpillar, Fujitsu, and Panasonic. And so before we get into the startup pitches, I'd like to bring on our current anchor partners, or 4 of them. So please help me welcome Jeff Yu from Bosch, Hisham Sabir from Philips Lighting, Dr. Tobias Farney from Munich Re, and Rashek Zarif from Daimler. So if you can join me on stage, and a round of applause for our panelists. So how are you guys?
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining me on this panel. I wanted to be able to kind of introduce you guys to the crowd and kind of tell everybody how great of a partner you are and what you've done between the time we've been working together. But before, or maybe let's start with this. Let's go in order. Introduce yourselves, your role in your company, and a little bit about your company. Should I start?
Yeah, so I'm part of Philips Lighting, new in the Silicon Valley, and my role here is to try to identify startups and corporate partners that we can engage in partnering or joint development, investment for the startup case. Looking for either exciting technology or new business models or something that complements our business. So Philips Lighting is the world leader in lighting today, and we're doing a massive transformation in services enabled by IoT. Yeah.
My name is Rashek Zarif, Senior Manager of Business Innovation at Mercedes-Benz Research. We're actually down the road in Sunnyvale. For those who don't know Mercedes, we invented the car. So, we constantly try to re-innovate what we're doing. You probably see a lot of press about what we're doing in autonomous driving and in the connected car space. But more in particular, what we do is our CEO, Dieter Zetsche, has made it very clear that we will no longer be an automotive manufacturer. We'll become a mobility service, a networked mobility service provider. So from that standpoint, IoT is really important.
Well, my name is Tobias, or as the Americans say, Tobias. So Tobias always sounds like 2 cold beverages, so I try to avoid this. But the German pronunciation would be Tobias. Anyway, I work for Munich Re, and Munich Re maybe not the most well-known company. We are the world's largest reinsurer, meaning that our customers are 5,000 primary insurance companies globally. It's a global business model, so basically we are everywhere. We insure everything, be it non-life, so products, machines, cars, but also life and health. It might be a little bit surprising for you that we are in the IoT and not the fintech. I might be able to talk about this a little later, but it really makes sense to us to be in the batch of IoT because that's what drives risk in the future. I'm part of a team of 5 here. We decided about a year ago to come to the Silicon Valley simply because we realized that sitting in Munich is nice and looking into the English garden, but wouldn't bring us closer to the innovation that's happening here. So we became anchor partner with Plug and Play, and we really like it a lot here, being here on a daily basis. That's our office here, so we already consider us part of the family. So it has been a great experience.
Hi, I'm Jeff Yu, and I'm with Robert Bosch Venture Capital, which is the corporate venture arm for Bosch. So my daily job is really to look for innovative companies that can help Bosch accelerate its path. If you don't know, Bosch is a very large German conglomerate, wide set of businesses, probably best known for automotive, where we do everything from spark plugs to the infotainment systems. But we're also involved in industrial automation, consumer white goods, a little bit in healthcare, security technologies, and we also make a lot of the sensors that are part of this whole IoT. So given the breadth of portfolio and markets that we're involved in, IoT is a major theme within Bosch. And so the venture group is part of that process of trying to accelerate Bosch into that direction.
Thank you, guys. We really like German companies. I can tell 3 out of the 4 companies that are up here are German companies.
All European.
Sorry. So I promised Tobias a curveball, so I'll start with a curveball. Before we get into the questions, we're going to play a little game called Word Association. So if you haven't heard what this is, I say a word and I point at you, and you have to say the first word that comes to mind.
Oh, gosh.
So for example, this is fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I say...
Just Tobias, right?
Just all Tobias.
Okay.
That's a lie. I'm going to pick on all of you. So for example, if I say Christmas, Hisham, you might say...
Tree.
Tree, exactly. Let's try this out. Tobias, the first one's to you. Plug and play.
Professional partner. You know where the donation box is, though, right?
I swear that wasn't rehearsed. Hisham, let's go with you. IoT.
Accelerator.
Rashek, let's go Bosch.
Cool partner.
And Jeff, startups.
Bosch.
Well, self-promotion there, I like it.
So if you don't know, Bosch is a private company still. So
Yeah.
It's a really big startup.
exactly.
Tobias, back to you.
Okay.
Donald Trump.
Oh, God.
No, don't answer that question. Don't.
I'll pass on that one. I can only lose on that one. Yeah?
Don't answer that question. Might get in trouble. How about Saeed Amidi? Okay, so you have to answer that question.
That's a strange, plug and play, Donald Trump, Saeed Amini. Okay, that's an interesting, okay.
Okay, let's go Elon Musk.
Great entrepreneur and strong visionary with the capability to execute.
Wow. Very nicely put. Hisham. Google.
Innovation.
True. Rashik. Internet.
Internet. That's where I do online shopping.
So do I. And last but not least, Jeff. Future.
Bosch.
Okay, enough fun. Let's get into the questions. So I know the last panel, the health panel, started with kind of an overall topic on connected health, I like to start kind of where they ended in terms of, I like to get to know and for the audience to know how each of your company is structured to work with innovation or to work with startups. So how your company is structured, kind of what business units are the ones working with them and how. And maybe we can start with Jeff at the end and come down.
So innovation is a major sort of theme that Bosch is pushing. And this is top to bottom, right from the CEO, pushing the idea of being more open. And so over the last few years, Bosch has embarked on a number of initiatives to try and be more open and work with outside companies, not only large partners, but with startups. So the venture group was one part of that initiative to be able to interact with startups. So obviously we've set up a fund in order to interact and invest and partner with these companies. But also the venture group also has now the mandate of facilitating that interaction with startups with the various business units. And so one of the things we've done in the last few years is try to bring our business units closer to the startup companies, and one of those mediums is working with Plug and Play. So we've done a number of these accelerators, and each one we brought in a different business unit to kind of interact, and that's what we're doing as part of this program as well.
Well, Munich Re and innovation. First, let's be open and self-reflective. I guess the insurance industry in general doesn't have the reputation of being the most innovative industry. And having said that, though, I mean, we survived for nearly 130 years, which somehow must mean that we were able to adapt and that we were able to drive business and business innovation. Sometimes it's maybe a bit more difficult to detect, and given the fact that you sit on a huge pile of ongoing business that might slow down the innovation here and there. What we've done now in the last years is really a tremendous effort, and for the first time that I've been with the company, and that's already nearly 15 years, we started to say, okay, let's not conceptualize on innovation, but let's just start doing it. And that is by putting out 5 people to Silicon Valley, by going out, talking to startups, but also established players, bringing back the ideas, and let's try and get away from this idea of let's first deeply understand and write a doctoral dissertation about something and then evaluate the risks and then maybe do something, but turn it around and say, okay, we'll try and get things going without having a triple checkup firsthand. We can still mitigate risk, we can limit the risk. I think we have a core competence in dealing with risk, be it innovation or existing, and that's what we've been trying in the last year. So Silicon Valley is one part of it. We set up an innovation group within the company. It's been deeply enrooted now with the board of management. We have a driver among the 8 board members that really push through that innovation development. And we expand the activities beyond Munich and Silicon Valley and go seek out other places like Tel Aviv, London, Berlin, just to get all that cultural change into the company.
And Shek.
Yeah, so you mentioned a lot. You first, I mean, we can just pretty much move on because they've hit a lot of really good points here. But specifically for Mercedes-Benz and our R&D group, we've been out here for about 20 years now, looking at multiple facets, especially in the connected car space. In the last few years, we've definitely ramped up our autonomous drive space. But when it comes to looking at new technologies as well as startups here in the Valley, it's really important to have good partners. We've been working for a very long time with Plug and Play Tech Center at different levels. And the more you develop relationship with partners like Plug and Play, the more they get to know your business and then look for those right startups for you to work with. In particular, in how we do innovation, my title kind of says it itself, is business innovation, and it goes back to the point that you need to look for startups that have a very robust business model. for every technology that's out there, there's at least 10 to 20 startups that are doing the same thing, but it's the company that has a robust business model that will be quite successful down the line. In our approach, we don't necessarily only look at them or potentially invest in them, but we also look at collaborating and doing pilots. So specifically in my group, we have a lot of pilots going on where we partner. I think the last thing we did was with Your Mechanic, which was also a group that we found here at Plug and Play Tech Center. We did a 1-year pilot with them, and we did a lot of lessons learned on seeing how we could potentially use their technology with Mercedes-Benz. So I think that's really key and important. It's not just saying like, here's a great company, send it off to headquarters in Europe or wherever it might be, but necessarily have the right team here to be able to test it out, to develop some credibility of the viability of what the technology is to headquarters.
Yeah, and I kind of. There we go. You kind of hit on the next question I was going to ask in terms of how do you, and this was a question that was asked in the last panel as well, but how do you kind of do successful pilots and POCs with startups, and how do you make like a win-win relationship between them? But we'll get back to that. Sure. Hisham, a little bit about your company, Philips, and how you guys are structured to work with innovation.
Yeah, I think the story is similar to what we've heard. So we're a company that has over 100 years of history in innovation, from the MRI to the CD and the Hue system that you might know recently, which have been all cooked in-house. But we're realizing that there's so much happening outside, and especially here in Silicon Valley, that we think, how can we best connect with what's happening here and kind of bring that innovation in-house or be part of that external innovation. So as a result, we have 2 different arms. One is the Open Innovation Group that I'm part of, which will find partners in startup to bring their technology in our solutions. And an investment arm that we're building right now to invest in startups. So that's, I think, the way that we're moving slowly, adding on top of our internal R&D competence and kind of outside-looking strategy for innovation.
Great, thanks. And so back to that question of kind of how do you create a win-win relationship with a startup? You know, we get a lot of, I don't know, questions, I guess, to us is we found a great startup, but we don't know how to interact with them to make this into a win-win situation with them. So Rashik, maybe you can even start. You guys are the pros of doing pilots with the startup, so you guys are up here, but maybe you can tell us kind of how are you able to create this win-win relationship with the startups that we work with?
I would actually turn around and it's how the startups can create a win-win relationship with us. Because quite honestly, in the companies that I've dealt with, they're too fast for me. And let's be honest about it. I mean, all of us are part of a major corporate organization, and although we have an offshoot or a branch out here, still in relation, they're very quick. Actually, we're about to launch another pilot with another startup group. You'll probably see in the press next week, but I'm getting emails where they're doing things literally on an hourly basis, and I can't keep up because I'm busy in meetings, whereas they're working overnight and doing things like that. So I think the real challenge in developing a win-win situation is trying to be flexible to their expectations while at the same time allowing them to be flexible to your expectations. And also being very clear right up front on what the intention is for that pilot. If you don't get that right, it could potentially lead to a bad situation.
I'll open it up. Tobias, do you want to chime in?
For us, I think like one major topic we had to address during the first 6 or 8 months was since insurance wasn't that much relevant to many of the IoT startups. I think the biggest challenge for us is always to find out what is it really that it can do, the technology, the innovation, or what the startup does for our business. How do we turn it into business for us? Is it just a pure service? Can we integrate it into our processes? Can we do products out of it? So the transformation is, I think, the biggest challenge for an industry which is a bit more remote. And I think that where we have progressed the most. But it's still a challenge. On top of it is us as reinsurers, we always stand behind the primary insurer. So sometimes we just feel the need, we even need to bring in our client to the discussion, which just adds complexity sometimes. But we're getting there, and I know that it's sometimes a little bumpy, and maybe startups expect a faster reaction from us. again, we're getting there, and I think for us most crucial is that we as a team here always try to bring in the business perspective from the various units, not necessarily back home in head office, but be it from the Asian operations or be it from Latin America. We need business owners that clearly say, I want to have that. And that's still, I mean, that's, I think, the biggest challenge and effort and time spent that we do. But once we have it, those are the most successful test cases.
Yeah, so you guys both mentioned some key challenges that you guys face in kind of creating this win-win relationships. Either Jeff or Hisham, maybe more on these challenges, because I know there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I think you know, they've already articulated the fact that there's a big difference in terms of speed. But having said that, one of the things that we encourage. So let me just take a step back. You know, from the venture side, when we make an investment, every investment we make has to have some strategic component. So, you know, when we make an investment, we first try to identify where those opportunities are within Bosch for partnership, for joint development, whatever. The range is sort of open-ended, but we have to build that case when we make that investment. So, as part of our diligence process, we're already starting that process of identifying where those opportunities are. Where the mismatch is timing. You know, the product cycles of, you know, automotive is quite lengthy. And so often there's a mismatch in terms of what a startup can do and their need to generate revenue versus, you know, what a Bosch can do to deploy product into Mercedes. So what we try to do is work with companies where there's sort of a dual path, where we'd like companies where they have near-term market opportunities that are not necessarily you know, fit directly into the automotive path of one of Bosch's products. We like to see them have, you know, opportunities in other divisions or markets where it's maybe more consumer-oriented or more near-term, but then offer them a longer-term path with these automotive, you know, or industrial-type applications. And that creates the win-win where, you know, Bosch can help these companies get something that is going to be huge, it's sticky, once you're in, it's long-term. At the same time, you know, startups bring this quick innovation cycle, enables Bosch to start thinking about embedding these new technologies early in the process.
Yeah, so some excellent points.
In the coming years to have the largest installed base of connected devices. And if you look above you and everywhere where you go, lighting is present everywhere. So if you imagine a second that each connected point, whether it's in your office, on the street, or in your home, becomes connected, you'll quickly end up with the largest installed base of connected devices. Now, if you take that as a starting point, then the question is, and like you mentioned before, you'll start gathering an immense amount of data about everything, but what do you do with that? So what are the use cases that are relevant for that specific area? So connected lighting is about gathering data from an installed base of connected devices, enable you, of course, to control that lighting system, but not only that, also provide information on your background, kind of integrate seamlessly in your environment, and be able to provide you another level of information beyond, that is just beyond lighting now. It's you getting data, lighting as your infrastructure, but the final application is, I think, in many cases, yet to be defined.
And Rashid, your wisdom on kind of the trend on autonomous driving or the connected car experience?
It's coming. It's coming sooner than you think. I think with the connected car, I know there's a lot of people trying to talk about what you put in the car and how you connect it. I think when you take a step back from a customer standpoint, and I think everybody in the room, whether you're a corporate, startup, or VCs, you really need to look at it from a customer's point of view. It needs to be seamless. It needs to be, when you go from walking down the street into your car to your destination, coming back out, it needs to be a smooth, seamless experience. And right now, almost everybody out there is focusing on developing connected devices in their world, but no one's really trying to solve that challenge of seamlessly interlinking them together. And I think that's going to be a big challenge up ahead. What's really important for us is we have, as I would call it, the vessel of where people spend anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day in their car driving, especially here locally on the 101 and 280. There's huge opportunity to interact, provide information flow, whether it's from Philips or from an insurance standpoint, or even with respect to connected home technologies. So I think it's really important on that front, and then especially when autonomous driving comes into play, the whole world inside the vehicle changes. I mean, if for those who have seen the FO15 that was shown at CES earlier in January, kind of shows how the entire vehicle just changes. Like what you see today, it's no longer relevant. That's another important aspect that we look seriously into on how, what customers will do once this connected space becomes more realistic.
And Tobias, you touched on it a little bit before, kind of the change, or now how startups are looking into the insurance market for kind of how they would penetrate the market. So how has insurance changed with IoT, and why should Plug and Play and Said and us create an insurance vertical?
Well, a couple of reasons. I mean, firstly, everything what the colleagues have mentioned is somehow risk-related. It either mitigates risks or it creates new risks. And sorry for being the negative guy. Always like, oh, everything is so dangerous. But that's our business. And that's where we find solutions, either to bring up a product to say, okay, let's say by autonomous vehicles, the risk might change. It's not the driver anymore who's the risk, but something else. Is it the software? Is it the car manufacturer? Is it the OEM? We don't know yet, but let's take a look, because if nobody's taking care of the risk, most probably it will never come to life, because people will feel like, oh, maybe it's too dangerous, so we shouldn't do it, and there will be protection for it. So that's where we see the chances. So the technology we see here helps us either to reduce risk or cater for product segments that we have been looking at. Now, that's one route. The other one is that we see that the insurance industry itself is going to be disrupted, simply because the old habit of someone sitting at your kitchen table trying to sell you a life insurance, most probably for my children, will not be the sales channel anymore. They look at it differently. They only want insurance where they really need it. My oldest daughter turned 17, and she's not really interested in having a car, which for me is absolutely astonishing, because that was the most important thing I wanted to have when I was her age. She says, well, I can get a car anywhere by sharing, and that's something that relates back to insurance. So all these things need to be incorporated, and currently, over the last 6 months, we see a number of startups that not only work on the risk, but that really work on building new insurance companies, and that's why you should start a vertical insurance, which we would like to participate in, because it's going to create a different breed of insurance companies. I'm pretty convinced.
We'll think about it. And last, Jeff, kind of the evolution of IoT within Bosch. I mean, you guys make the world's best sensors, and IoT can't exist without sensors. So what's that kind of transition been for you guys?
Well, it's so not only sensors for us. We make connected kitchen appliances and household goods, connected devices in manufacturing, industrial automation. So for Bosch, the range is pretty. It's really diverse, and in each sort of vertical, the challenges are different. For example, in manufacturing. We look at a lot of companies doing predictive analytics for manufacturing and things like that. But then the challenge is that not all, the lines are fully censored, so that still needs to happen. The ones that are censored, the data is in all disparate, different kinds of databases, all over the place in different formats. So there's a different set of challenges there versus, say, in the connected home, where there are a lot of point solutions. What do you do when you have a connected dishwasher? that's a point solution, but how do you integrate that into an overall experience for the consumer that relates to cooking, cleaning, and everything else? So it's hard to answer one specific thing.
Okay, and since we're running out of time, just maybe quick 5 to 10 second answer, but what's the next big thing for you or for your IoT? And maybe we'll start other way, Jeff.
Well, I think that the field is interesting because there's no dominant platform, right? So the internet, you have Google, e-commerce, there's Amazon. So here the space is wide open. You've got big companies like us trying to vie for that. I'd love to find the next, as Saeed said, startup to be the dominant platform. I think the key is trying to identify that first entry point. It could be a connected lock or a thermostat, but from there, how do you widen that so that you become the dominant platform? I'd love to hear from you if you've got that vision. Start with a point product that expands into something really big. That's what would be interesting for me.
And Tobias?
For me, it's the migration from IoT collecting data and sensing data to making it intelligent. That's just what I've seen in the last 12 months, that more and more competence and know-how is being developed in deriving relevant messages out of data that's being generated. And that's I think, maybe not the next big thing, but that's the next big progress that we see and which is so relevant to us.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the next big disruption, so to say, not the next big thing that's so yesterday, is that it is the predictive analytics part. It is being able to take all the data that's out there and connecting it all together. And I'll reiterate again, it's about that seamless integration. Right now, everyone's doing IoT, but no one's really, there are companies out there, but there isn't a real solution on bringing it all together.
Yeah, and just to say something different and not go also in the data and analytics part, which is a huge issue also for us. Is there a sensor that can tell me how many people are in this room and that is very cheap? No. So there's also, on the hardware front, a lot of stuff that we're waiting for, from connectivity to new sensors. And especially in the mass market that we are traditionally in, that's something that we're really looking for.
And that's how you do a 30-minute panel. Thank you guys for being here, and a round of applause for the panelists.
Thank you.